thank you guys so much for being here, for hanging out with us while Kris Jenner is speaking. I hope we can make it worth it. We have two brilliant women here talking about what it is to be a successful creator right now. Drew is huge on TikTok, and Michelle's huge on YouTube, but they also participate across the creator ecosystem. And I really just want this to be participatory, so please use your QR code for questions. To get started, I want to have each of you walk us through like what it takes to get to the level you are now. How much of it was you knew what you wanted and now we're here, or how much of it was like complete surprise and giving an audience what they were asking for? And we can start with you, Drew, since I feel like it's a more recent experience.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that I planned on this happening. I think it kind of just fell into my lap, which I think is the case for most influencers. I think it's like accidental. Being able to sustain it and turn it into a career is like a privilege, obviously, and it's also something I'm like very, very excited about. Prior to this, I was working in journalism. I had an emphasis in sports journalism. I wanted to be a sideline reporter or a commentator for like professional football. And so I got that job, got fired, and then now I do this for a living. And that never would have happened had I not been fired. So it was purely an accident that it happened, but I will say once I saw, the momentum of it, I thought to myself, like I had saved enough money, and I told my mom and my dad, I was like, I'm gonna do it for 6 months, like 6 months consistently, I'm gonna commit to it, and if it turns into something great, if not, I'll go get another job. And so my parents are so supportive of everything I do, so they were like, okay, 6 months sounds good. And I did it to the day in 6 months, so very exciting. Glad it worked out.
By the time 6 months hit, you had your virality.
Yeah, I had hit 1 million. I had gotten signed. I had got like my very first brand deal. So I at 6 months, I made it happen. So I was very grateful for it. So yeah.
I think let's give people a sense of what Drew does. Can we play a video of her work?
You cannot emasculate someone who doesn't draw power from pushing you down.
And the last image.
That's what happens with people who got famous for being funny and people who got famous for being hot and neat in the wild.
I know.
So you get a sense of the energy, but it's also like you have a mission, a message, helping empower people who, may feel downtrodden by the trolls online, by feeling the need for male acceptance, or finding that strength to be strong and confident, really. And Michelle, for you, you've been building your brand on YouTube for longer. Before that, you were at BuzzFeed. You've been through some eras here of media transformation. How did you find the road to where you are now?
Yeah, so I think what Drew has done in such a short amount of time is so amazing. That was not my experience. I started actually working for another YouTube channel and kind of used that as an opportunity to learn how, figure out what it means to be an online content creator, how to produce content, how to edit it, what performs well, which is often what you think won't perform well. And then from there, I kind of grew my knowledge, used it as kind of like a version of grad school of YouTube, if you will. And then from there, developed my own show called Challenge Accepted, and left and started my own YouTube channel. And I think that the biggest thing that I think is such a privilege of what we do is that really the only barrier to entry is the upload button. And I think a lot of people get hung up in like, oh my gosh, is this the best piece of content I could have made? When in reality, there is so much opportunity to create, to learn, and to grow.
And let's play a video of what Michelle is working on now so people get a sense.
Get up on the board!
Hi, sir.
Jump, 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 jump.
Now, there isn't a person who's ever lived but one has a weakness of one kind or another. You've got to recognize your weakness, and you've got to change that weakness into power.
Fire Academy, the U.S. Marine Corps, the FBI, motion capture, figure skating, lifeguard academy. You guys requested it, so we are doing it.
Come on, Michelle, go.
Can't stop, we won't stop. I'ma go to war till I'm on top.
There's no limits. It's how much you want to push your body, push the envelope.
That was completely insane.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, so that show challenge accepted. Basically, you take on all of these new jobs that you have to be trained for in very specific ways and see if you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have to decide on one job, fortunately. I just get to try all of them, and it's so much fun.
It's good. I mean, one thing that strikes me, you know, I hear you on the barrier to entry, like anyone can be a creator, anyone can do this, but it's also like you have to teach yourselves the best practices, and really there's no rule besides what the platforms are teaching. So how do you educate yourselves to feel like, okay, now I understand this. Like now I can teach other people.
I mean, I think I would say, and we kind of talked about this backstage, but I don't think there's a specific formula to virality. I think it's honestly, most of it is luck, which is a great thing. It's just what you do with it after you get it. So once you get the opportunity to go viral and you have people's attention, what kind of, you know, practices do you put into place after the fact? Like, do you keep creating content? Do you keep pushing? Do you keep posting? Do you get scared because you get the attention and now you don't know what to do, so you don't upload at all, and then it dies off and then you have to rebuild it again? So for me, I think creating the content that I was making in the beginning, which was just telling silly stories, at first was something I just genuinely enjoyed doing. Like, I just love to talk. I don't know if that's obvious by my platform. I love to hear myself talk. And so on my platform, no one else can talk. It's just me. So I get to, you know, say all of my opinions and cut it down, edit it, post it. And once I got the attention and I started getting more requests, I really leaned into it. So I posted every single day, a new video every single day. Like, I did not miss one day because I just wanted to keep creating content in order to foster my community, to build up like my reps, my repertoire, that kind of stuff, and kind of just start to establish the platform seriously. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like we're fortunate now in the year of 2023 that there are like grassroots education platforms for people to learn from, or there are like YouTube strategists, but honestly, it's still quite new and a lot of Wild West. And what's been most helpful for me is over the past year, just meeting with other creators and like joining small groups of creators to get honest feedback from them. Because even if there isn't a formula, which I totally agree with, there are definitely best practices or like even just getting second opinions on titles and thumbnails or edits can be so valuable. And when you are in a support group with other people who are at your level or even a bit further along in their career than you, you can learn so much. So I think like in the absence of a formal film school for digital content creation, being around like-minded people has been the best education for me.
And that dovetails with a question we have from the audience about like, how do you deal with the fear of getting started?
Oh my gosh. I mean, one of my favorite quotes, honestly, is everything you want is on the other side of fear. And I think like fear can be such an amazing emotion to listen to and to engage with, even when it says to not. And really, I think it's like just putting yourself out there and learning from it and growing. You can always private a piece of content if later down the line you're like, that wasn't my best edit or I wasn't super thrilled with how it turned out. but you don't get any data on your story and your voice unless you actually put something out there. Even if it's a total flop, like that's excellent data for you to learn from and you know, get feedback on from the community or from other people.
I think, yeah, like absolutely. And I think too, when you make peace with the fact that no matter what you post, someone's gonna have something negative to say. It could be the most uplifting, amazing, harmless content in the world. Someone I always use as an example is Emily Mariko, which I'm sure people are familiar with her on TikTok. Love her to death. She's the best. She doesn't even talk in her videos, and she gets hate. She doesn't even talk. She just cooks and minds her business, and she gets hate. So if you make peace with that early on, it'll make it a lot easier to upload your content because you know why you're doing it, which is for you. I enjoy this. It makes me feel creative. It makes me feel like I have an impact or a voice, or I want to give a voice to someone else. And then you make peace with getting hate no matter what. Because not every platform's like mine. Mine's comprised of hate. I stand on the shoulders of people who hate me to be so successful. Look at me.
I know, I was going to say, like, of all of you, yeah, but I mean, just to ask you, like, the personal question, like, you have that platform, you show such a strong face to your audience, but hate is hate. I mean, you're still getting it. You're still getting those trolls. Oh, yeah. How do you deal with it on a personal level? I know the content is an outlet, but
yeah, I mean, part of my, I mean, for my content specifically, it's all about misogyny, right? Patriarchy, many different facets of bigotry. It knows no bounds. But for me, I've done a lot of unpacking over the years. I've unpacked a lot of my own internalized biases. I'm still growing and learning every day, as are most people, or at least everyone should strive to. So I've unpacked all of my internalized misogyny, which means I don't take any sort of male validation into stock from my own confidence. Like, what men who don't mean anything to me think of me doesn't matter. So that's why the hate doesn't bother me. Because one of us is on stage at Bloomberg and the other one's at home, babe, so I'm not worried about it, you know what I mean? But I feel, for me, I've let go of male validation a long time ago. So it truly doesn't hurt me or harm me when awful men want to say like terrible things about what it is I look like. It just fosters my platform. It makes me more successful. Don't tell them. So yeah, that's how I deal with it personally. But
just driving the engagement to your content. Yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Yeah, and you're doing a lot of jobs that are in male-dominated fields, right? And you have to say, yes, it is safe to let me try this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the beginning of doing Challenge Accepted, thankfully it's not so much the case anymore, but we would reach out to a lot of different organizations and they would want to water down the experience for me or often question my own physical ability. And in some cases it makes sense because a lot of these things are dangerous to do. But in some cases I was like, shouldn't this resume I feel be enough to warrant me getting to do this thing? And honestly, it just made me work harder. And like you said, like when someone says no, it just makes me want to make them say yes even harder. So it led to a lot of like personal growth for me. And eventually it was funny to see like when we had an instance, let's say like where someone said no to working with me. And then a few months later came back and was like, wait a second, you're releasing all these videos and we see what you're doing. And by then it was like, you've missed the train. So I think like doubting a female creator or any like female businesswoman in her place when she has a resume that is valued and worthy is a missed opportunity for the person saying no.
And I'm speaking of opportunity, there are at least a few people in this audience who are in the marketing, advertising, branding world. How would you suggest they navigate the sea of options and work with creators that will actually be helpful for their brands?
Do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like finding a creator whose ethos you personally vibe with. I mean, unlike choosing a TV show to put your ad in front of, there's so much more personal connection, which is an amazing benefit. And when you're collaborating with a creator, I think it's a lot about like finding that vocal and audience and personality fit, and just someone you enjoy working with and whose content you already consume. I think where a lot of brands go wrong is when they're like, oh, that demographic is correct. They decide to work with the creator and then want to reinvent the creator's show or tone or vibe or existing format. The reason it's successful is because of what Drew has, put, one video a day for forever learning, and that is something that a brand should have trust in, which is different from traditional advertising. But I think historical data at this point has shown that creator partnerships can be so much more successful than that traditional advertising, and for good reason when you trust.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly what I was going to say as far as trusting the creator that you chose, right?
Yeah.
So understanding that the creator you chose knows how their audience consumes content, specifically theirs. They know what they like, what makes them engage with it, what makes them want to buy it, right? Or use the code or whatever it is you're trying to market to them. So I've worked with many, many different amazing brands, well-established brands, and I've been very lucky where 99% of them have been so open to letting me tell them what my idea is and letting them kind of trust me with the premise, trust that this will do well numbers-wise, and I will, we'll achieve the goal together. We work together, we move units, everybody gets an amazing product, and everybody wins. So I think trusting that the creator knows their audience probably better than you do is probably what I would lean towards. There have been instances in the past where brands are a little harder to work with because they're very, very stringent on this is what we do, this is how we do it. And a lot of times my team is so great that they fight on the hill for me in that sense. And they tell them you hired her for a reason, you know that she knows her audience, just trust that she knows what she's doing. So it's worked out great, but that's what I would do is, like Michelle said, just put the trust in the creator. They know how to market to their audience.
Yeah, and I would just add also, we want the video to do well.
Yeah.
We don't want to put out a piece of content that our audience is not going to like. That doesn't benefit us. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that too.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the business, just for the last few months with the strike, I know there's been some tension between people who are TV, movie creators and people who are social media creators. While a strike is going on, what can you? First of all, how do you feel about it, and then how do you really move forward and think about the future? I
feel for me, it's speaking from a place of privilege. My platform is not centered around movies and TV, but I am friends with lots of creators whose platforms are, and they have been standing in solidarity with SAG, with WGA, just like I am. And so I'm someone who the closest tie to that world is hosting, and I've done a lot of different hosting gigs for production companies. I did the Oscars, wonderful, amazing opportunities. But sometimes things shift and things change, and that's as creators, I think we're used to pivoting a lot of times because nothing is
We'll get to
concrete.
pivoting.
Nothing is concrete in this business, and we know that, I feel. So we're constantly having to adapt, and I'm more than happy to adapt in order to stand in solidarity. I know Michelle is too.
Yeah, for sure. 100% solidarity with SAG and WGA. And whenever a group of people go on strike, it's a huge sacrifice because it lifts all of the other departments in that community. And I just have so much respect for what they're doing. And a lot of the things they're fighting for are things that inevitably will positively impact us. And I think, it's long overdue that the actors and writers and, even departments who haven't yet had the opportunity to strike receive what they're seeking. And obviously we're privileged that we do in a way receive residuals from YouTube or other platforms, whether it's a creator fund or otherwise, that scales to the relative amount of views or AdSense we provide. And that is such a huge privilege. And also when these communities strike and they create new rules, it impacts how we run our businesses, and we can look to them to create a wonderful environment for creation with our teams too.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, you're working for platforms that have ever-changing rules and algorithms that are not always transparent. Creators can't necessarily go on strike from Instagram and demand that they fix whatever broken these days, right? And so, how do you navigate the just turbulence of like something else is always being promoted? Like one day it's Reels, the next day it's going to be something else, and kind of keep your content always evolving to meet that need.
I mean, I think like what you just said, it's just constantly having to evolve and making peace with that fact, and knowing, like, for me specifically, like my niche is very, very specific. Like I have a very, very small niche, but I've been able to twist it in a way that I can talk about a lot of different things. And I think a big key for that for me was, I know on TikTok what my niche is. Maybe Instagram is an opportunity. It's a platform I can use to platform something else, like a different side of me that's not always the same content. That way I'm rolling balls in all different directions. Like all of them are going at the same time. They know I can make fun of men, but they know I can do a skincare routine, and they know I have a boyfriend and I have a family, but they also know that I hate terrible men. It's just like they get to see all different sides of me. I think no person is one-sided or one-faceted. We're all multifaceted in many different ways. So I think making your platforms able to showcase all those different sides kind of helps you diversify and be a little more balanced in terms of like if things change or shift on different platforms.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I totally agree about the diversification, which is something I could probably do a better job of and look to Drew to learn from, honestly. But I also think like there's a lot of focus on like algorithm changing, computers doing things behind the scenes. But I also think like people change. People change constantly. Trends come in and out, and that's because of humans, not because of an algorithm necessarily. Mm-hmm. And so like when you engage in a public-facing business, music, art, anything like that, you have to be willing to either create something that maintains people's attention for years or be willing to go alongside people's attention and enrich it along the way. And so I just think it's just a nature, honestly, of any art form.
Yeah.
How do you avoid burnout?
Avoiding burnout.
If you avoid it.
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of creators do it different ways, but I think what's been really, honestly, a blessing in disguise for me is my videos take anywhere from 6 to 12 months to produce one video. And with that, it's a long time to spend on one piece of content, but also when you're
really rare.
Yeah, it's not a situation I recommend necessarily. But the beauty of that also for our team has been just like natural progressions and natural breaks. We also, just institute normal things like a work week and weekends and holidays and making sure that everybody who's a part of our team like has ample opportunity to give feedback and take space.
For burnout, I mean, this sounds kind of contradictory, but you burn out. Like you burn out and then you're like, that sucks. How do I avoid that? And then you kind of reassess from there. I'm someone who I feel like I was, especially because I came from corporate America, like I lived a very normal life. Before I started doing this, I was very normal. I had normal jobs. I had many different jobs. Until I got fired. That was a little different. But that's a human experience that I unfortunately had to experience before I started doing this. So I'm someone who was stuck in a toxic productivity cycle. So even with my social media career, I felt like I had to constantly be producing in order to be worthy of success, in order to be, like deserving of all the accolades I received because of the platform, which eventually led me to burnout. So in order for me to temper that, I had to admit that I was feeling burnout, and be honest with myself about why I was feeling burnout. And I think part of it was just overworking. Another part of it is, for my content specifically, I get to see really, really awful things all the time. Like I'm constantly looking at it, I'm constantly seeing it, I'm constantly experiencing it in a way that's like it's being targeted at me specifically. So once I made, diagnosed all of that, I was able to, implement different practices that help me. So like unplugging when necessary, going into therapy. God, if you do this for a living, go into therapy. And then leaning on my other friends, creating a network of other creators. Because like Michelle said, it's important to have other creators around you to no one can relate to your problems, unfortunately, but other creators can. So you can bounce problems off of them and, find a sense of community and then learn how to gauge it.
I think honestly that advice applies to everyone using social media, especially right now. I'm getting so many messages from people who are really struggling with what they're being, what they're seeing as they scroll every day. I want to end on a forward-looking note. We have a question here specifically for Drew, but I want to ask Michelle too about the future of your brand. Where do you go from here? It's been a couple of years, as long as you want to. What are the aspirations? How does it evolve?
For me, I obviously have the comment section, which is my Spotify exclusive podcast, which is so wonderful. And I have one with my sister too, called Two Idiot Girls. I'm writing a book right now that comes out next year with Questlove's imprint, which is very, very exciting. I'm also working on a bunch of other things that I cannot talk about, but I think the sky is truly the limit. I would love to, have on TV talk show at some point someday, be in movies, television. I think the only thing I can't do is sing, but you never know. So I think the sky's truly the limit. For that. Yeah, I'm very excited for what's in store. So yeah.
Yeah, I think all of that's amazing. I share a lot of the same goals. Obviously, the strikes are so important to us for anybody who wants to work in traditional Hollywood, TV of any nature. So I, have a lot of privilege there to benefit from that. And I think personally, what I want to do is just keep growing my YouTube channel. And ultimately, the North Star goal is to win an Emmy for Challenge Accepted. We won Show of the Year at the Streamies this year. But I think it would be really cool as an independent creator with our own insular production company to win an award like that.
Hell yeah. All right. Thank you, ladies. This has been so amazing.